welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to have a chat with you today.
Thank you, Elena, for having me today. I'm excited.
So first off, let's start off with your career story. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're doing today, and what does your day-to-day look like?
Yes, I am the managing partner of a company called Yellowtail Tech, where we help people with no IT background break into the IT industry. So we've been doing this for about 8 years or so now. We started in 2014 very timidly, figuring out our product, figuring out our market. And in 2016, we went full throttle. This is actually when we realized we want to specifically serve people with no IT background, because we realized that there is a lot of offering for training, but there's not much that's particularly targeted and built and designed for people with no IT background. So that's why we went into that area. So that's what I've been doing for the past 8 years. And yeah, and I'm enjoying it. We are growing, we are serving so many people. So it's exciting.
That's really exciting. It's a great space. It's always been a great space to be, but particularly now, which I'm hoping to get into it today. But I wanted to kind of take you a little back, because I'm always curious, what do people study in universities, and kind of what was your career before that, before you decided to go into IT? And what was there like a turning point? You're like, this is a great business opportunity. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, I have a background in management information system. I went to school for that. And after my college years, I realized that I didn't have too much specific skills to go sell to the market. I had a degree. I was fortunate to go and get some, interesting jobs, but I felt that I needed something more. And I found a mentor that trained me on specifically Linux, the operating system called Linux. And immediately, almost immediately, about 6 months after, my market value increased about twofold. And I realized that this is what's missing. A lot of people have degrees, but they don't have a set of skills to go sell specifically to the market and say, hey, from day one, this is exactly what I can do for you. And I thanked my mentor, and I always promised him not only to thank him, but to take whatever he gave me and build it up. So his name is Jonas Okwara. But it took a few years. I went in different ways to work in the corporate world. And then in 2014, as my wife wanted to do a transition into away from social science into IT, and I said, hey, if you're interested in IT, I can support you, I can help you. And as I'm helping her, as we are going through the process, we realized that we might have a product. So we spent 2 years not only working on her transition, but working on the business plan, on the proposition. And I went ahead of helping friends, helping family members, and I've seen success. So this is at that point where we say, okay, let's formalize it, let's productize this, let's improve the process, and let's offer it as a proper training. So it's unlike most people, I didn't come up with a great businessman one day, all set up, all figured out, and go to market with it. It was literally an iterative process on 2 years. And from there, we launched. And a little bit after launching, we stepped back a little bit, and we realized that most of the success we were having were not with people with IT background, which is counterintuitive, by the way, even to me back then. And we realized it's mostly people who have absolutely no idea about IT, but who have a pain. The pain is, I hate what I'm doing, I dislike it, I'm done with it, I'm ready to move on. So we realized that this is the best place, this is the niche, this is the opportunity we can tap into and focus and build products for a group of people who are trying to move away from whatever they're doing. And it's usually people with bachelor's degree and master's degree, but they're just ready for that change, that pivot in their life. So
Mm.
that's what we've been doing.
I love it that you said that it took you a couple of years. And I think that's like the best way to do it in general, right? Like you always hear these like stories like people have business plans, but it's not, but realistically, that's not how it happens. It's usually through like trial and errors and like, I think there might be something here. Let me experiment. Let me just try these things out. And that's how it comes together. And that's that. And I think it's usually the businesses that end up lasting longer because there's a lot more thought went into it versus kind of going all in. And I'm curious also, and it is interesting that a lot of people that you're working with don't come from IT background. And I'm in a career development space, and I can definitely see how that's super interesting to a lot of people because I've seen a huge shift in like some of the clients I work with, where people are really just trying to find a way to break into tech. And tech is such a large industry in itself. There's just so much to it, right? And there's so many things that, I mean, the tech is so huge, and I think that when people think tech, they think like something, I don't know, maybe just software development, but there's so much. Tech is in every industry. So I'm curious, like, have you seen, first of all, question is, I guess, what a specific, do you focus on specific platforms or
Yes.
industries, or like how did you choose one way or the
Yes,
other?
good question. For the same reason you just stated, we realized how broad the industry is, and we said we are subject matter expert in the operating system called Linux, which is an enterprise operating system that most people are using every day of their life. They probably don't realize it. If you have an Android, you are using Linux every day, or an iPhone. So we decided, instead of being a jack of all trade, we were going to be the subject matter expert in this operating system and train people into this operating system. And of course, the natural progression was cloud computing, specifically AWS, because like most people don't realize, AWS is built 100% on Linux. So we only have two programs. We are subject matter expert in this area, and we intend, at least for the near future, to focus more on iteratively improving our programs as opposed to trying to appeal to everyone and do everything. So that's our business model. Not spread ourselves too thin, but make sure we are continuing to being subject matter expert in the Linux and AWS cloud space.
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting space to be for sure. And I'm curious, when you are working with individuals, what do you see is maybe the biggest challenge that people have with getting into that tech space? I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well on is it only about tech skills, or is there something else to really be able to sell yourself into a new industry? Because that's difficult to
Yeah.
break into. So
Yes, it's definitely not only about tech skills. There is this famous catch-22, and it's real, by the way. You need a job to get the experience, but wherever do you get that experience if you don't have the job? So that's the biggest challenge we've seen, and we've taken step to deal with that by um, offering an apprenticeship with an external company to our graduate, where they actually are able to gain that hands-on that the market is requiring. So this is one of the main issues we see. Second, to tell you the truth, it's as simple as time. And let me explain you what I mean. Most people who come to me are working professionals, and they don't have the time or the bandwidth to commit to studying. It's not the desire, it's just that life gets in the way more than they would admit to, or they would want to. You see? So that's the biggest challenge, keeping someone who has a 9 to 5, who has bills, who has 3 kids, who has real responsibility. Although they are very interested, they've made the financial commitment to do the transition, but life gets in the way more than you would imagine. So that's the biggest challenge really we have to deal with.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to transition your whole life to create space for this thing. But I feel like it's like with anything else, any change is scary, and any change requires to create that space, and it's almost like you have to rearrange and make time, and then you just have to make time in a way that makes sense. So that's interesting. And so in addition to kind of the having that experience and the having the technical skills and the combination of and the time, obviously, are there any soft skills that you see as prevalent in the tech space?
Um, yes, the eagerness to do research, how how much of a self-starter is the person, how curious is that person, because a lot of students, they just come to the class just ready to receive whatever you give them, and that's it.
Mm,
But there are some people, you give them that and they run with it. They question it, they
mm,
research it, they go deep, they go on YouTube, they dive in to different places, they buy their own books, because they also realize that even if I try, I cannot deliver everything you need to know to be a well-rounded technologist.
right.
So I think that's the main characteristic I see for people who actually excel and excel fast in this industry.
Mm.
It's their curiosity.
Yeah, that's a big one for sure. I think it's just across board. You got to be curious, and everything's just changing too fast. So people really have to have that curiosity so they can keep up with what's out there. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about you as an entrepreneur. So it's entrepreneurship is, starting a business, building a business, maintaining that business is very hard. And I think that's where a lot of misconceptions are. And people, they say, oh, you have a business, that means you probably just work when you want and etc. And there's a joke. I thought like on social media, it's like, you escape the 9 to 5 so that you can have the freedom. And now, and that now that you have your own business, it's like working 14, 16 hours a day. So I'm curious, how has been your roller coaster of entrepreneurship journey? How has it been?
Yes.
How has been your experience?
Well, I'm fortunate now that we are at the point where, I'm surrounded by a very capable and committed team. So in fact, I work less,
Mm-hmm.
but I can only claim that for the past 2 years.
Right.
But before, I was everything. If
Mm-hmm.
you go back and look at the testimonial on my website, I was actually the person interacting with all the students, talking to them, enrolling them. The only thing I've never done personally is teach, but I was the business.
Mm-hmm.
But as you grow, as you figure out your product, as the market accepts what you are offering as valuable, you are able to expand your team. As you also recruit people and you sell into the vision,
Mm-hmm.
it's easier to build a team around you where, you get to a point where you have a regular week. I For the past 2 years, I do work weekends if I want to, but it's not something that's necessary to keep the company growing. So yeah, it's definitely been a journey, and especially after 2020. Well, during COVID, it was crazy. We were going through a very big growth spurt due to everything going online. People were really eager to transition away from anything that brings them to the office. So I had to put in a lot of work myself.
Mm.
But I was lucky to have people around me to help me build teams, build processes where I can remove myself um, gradually, but not completely, but gradually
Mm-hmm.
remove myself from the operation. So yeah, I've been fortunate like that.
Yeah, so that's great. And why Yellowtail? What's the story behind the name? I see your
Yeah.
shirt, but I love when I see branded shirts. So what's
Yes,
the
yes,
story
yes.
with Yellow?
It's actually a romantic story.
Mm-hmm.
Yellowtail was the cheap wine that my wife and I loved.
Oh yeah, of
We
course I know
found out
Yellowtail.
that
Yeah.
Yeah, we found out that that's the first thing we found out we had in common when we were dating. And when we were about to build this company, we were like, you know what? Let's call it the first thing we had in common, which is Yellowtail. Now we are rebranding to Yellowtail Tech for
Mm-hmm.
obvious reasons,
Mm-hmm.
mostly for SEO reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so it's Yellowtail Tech.
Okay, that's cool. That's I'm always curious how people like kind of, and so there's always a story,
Yes, always,
So there's
always.
always a story. That's a great one. So What have been some of your, people who are listening to this that are, maybe thinking about going into entrepreneurship? What have been some of your biggest lessons for you that you had no idea was going to come up when you started this business?
Um, well, I had no idea I was going to do that pivot because, like we were talking about, my business plan was take people who are already in IT and
Mm-hmm.
help them level up to making from $50,000 to almost doubling their income.
Mm-hmm.
Because that, by the way, this is still a great proposition. It's just that it doesn't resonate with people already in the IT industry.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest thing that happened is when I saw the pattern and we were willing to dive in and embrace that reality that people with IT background are not necessarily resonating with what I'm offering. It's mostly people with no IT background. When we decided to go in and specifically serve this market, our training center blew up
Mm-hmm.
because now we were really talking to people who felt they didn't have a place that really understood where they were in their journey.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of places they accept people with no IT background, but
Right.
their program is not tailored
Mm-hmm.
towards people with no IT background. So to me, that was one of the biggest shift. The
Mm-hmm.
second biggest shift that happened in the business is in 20 and during 2020 we were already moving to a hybrid environment where you could be in class or you could be online, but COVID arrived and I made the very scary decision that we're going to close shop. We're going to be 100% online company. And that was the one of the biggest and most important decision of the company because that year we grew about 260%.
Wow.
So that these are the two pivotal time,
Mm-hmm.
and that were scary, but that
Yeah.
were very much telling in what Yellowtail has become today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that opened up your market to like a global audience, even, So
Exactly.
that's yeah, and I think there was if there was one silver lining that came out of COVID is probably these sort of stories where opportunities were created as a result. So and now that more and more people feel comfortable doing trainings online and kind of these sort of sessions, because even before it was like a mindset shift that everybody had to go through, like, oh, we can actually do this. So, and there's been a lot of people who never thought they would be okay with online kind of learnings. And now you see them, they even prefer it. So I think that
Yeah,
almost created a new customer for a lot of companies. So that
exactly. And like you said, everything became easier.
yeah.
Employers became open to hiring certifications. For example, the main certification my student had to go and get was only in a testing center. They
Mm,
actually rushed the process to put it online.
mm,
So now you could train online, you could certify online, you could get hired online, and also the 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 customer was a little bit more comfortable doing 100% of their training online, which was very different in 2019.
mm.
You see, so everything shift to our favor, of course.
Yeah, yeah. And so what would be some reasons people shouldn't go into tech? Are there people that, you say, this is not the reason to go into tech? What are some, I guess, because
Yeah.
it seems like again, it's such a cool thing to do and trendy thing to do, right? It's like, oh, tech, like everybody wants to go into tech, but are there some, people that you're like, maybe this is not the best reason to go into tech?
If you only go to tech to for the money,
Mm-hmm.
if you only go into tech for the possibility of remote work, it's tricky as well because remote work sounds interesting and sexy when you just hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is you always alone. You were always in an office alone. You can forget about hanging out with your coworkers around the water cooler. You always are looking at a screen. So it's not all great and sexy.
Mm,
So remote working is very, you have to understand who you are as a person and understand if that would work for you on the long term. Because I still have people now who would rather go back, at least on a hybrid format, go back to the office. And also, if you only go into this industry for the money, what's going to happen is, yeah, you're going to get a pay increase, but you're going to grow into it so fast, nothing else is going to keep you motivated. The right reason is if you love learning, if you love a challenge, if you love solving problems. And of course, if all that is true, yes, you're going to also make more money. You see, you're going to also be able to work from anywhere. But these things should come second. Your interest for the craft should always come first. So
mm.
that's my warning to people in general.
Yeah, and I see this quite a bit in the tech space that I'm in. It's eventually you just burn out because there is something to, you know, enjoying what you do, you know, something that gives you energy, or does it take energy from you? And yes, you can give energy to something that you don't necessarily enjoy, but for how long? And eventually people do find themselves burning out because, and especially if they're not really interested, if they're, you know, if they're not truly interested in that and they're not curious, and it's very difficult to be curious in something you're not interested in. So either they hit burnout or they hit a ceiling, right? And
Yep.
you see this, I'm sure you see this, I see this a lot in the industry of software developers, where you see that they're not really into it. They get stuck at this middle level. It's very difficult to move forward because that requires a different kind of just level of skills and
Yeah.
understanding.
And it's dangerous
Yeah,
for their career as well,
yeah,
because you
absolutely.
get to a point where you stop learning, but technology doesn't stop moving.
Yeah.
And what happens is now you become a one-trick pony, where if you get fired, or if at any point you want to leave this job you are in, you might not have relevant skill for the next job.
Mm.
You see, so it's a very dangerous position to be. So I warn people to make sure you get into this for the right reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so where, if people want to, first of all, question, are you B2C or B2B? Do you also do B2B work
No, only
with companies?
B2C.
Okay.
Uh, we have partnership with companies to help funnel our students,
Mm-hmm.
but we are exclusively B2C.
Okay. And so if somebody's interested, do you do some kind of trials, or like some kind of like little exposures where they can see if it's even for them before they sign up? Do you do anything like that where people can
Yes,
find you?
we have some demo classes, and they can access. They also can get in touch with our enrollment advisors, so they can start the conversation and go from there. We make sure, we try to ask the right questions to see where they are in their journey,
Yeah.
and we go from there. Yeah.
Okay, great. And so, is there just I'm curious, like, is there a age limit? Because that's a big misconception as well. Like, right, like, oh well, you know, only young people are doing tech these days, you know. But like, what is your thought on that?
No, because the average student of mine is 35 and more.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I don't want to say there's no age limit, because I haven't had to place or work with anyone over 60.
Right.
But I don't think age is the primary issue, or if it is, I haven't seen it yet. It's how much you want this, how ready you are to actually do the work. To me, at least according to the data we have, that's what's important.
Mm. So it seems like it's more of a mindset. So, because
Yeah,
that's what a lot of people,
very much.
that's many people fear, that is like, well, no, I'm too old to go into tech, or I'm too old to start over. And this is what you hear, right? But it's like just the mindset, the fear speaking of that individual. So if you're listening to this and you want to change something, this might be a great way to just dip your toes
Dive in.
into a new
Yeah,
area.
yeah, dive in and try. Well, not try, because that's one thing I warn people. This thing, you can try it. You can get in and give it no choice but to succeed. That's the only time it's going to work. You can dabble, you can't, let's see what happens. Nope. You have to go all in, or if you feel it's not the right thing for you, look for another way to change career, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And so if people want to get in touch with you personally, are there any social media channels that you hang out at?
Yes, definitely. On Instagram, yellowtail.tech, or
Mhm.
you could visit us online on our website. It's also yellowtail.tech. We are on LinkedIn. It's always yellowtail.tech anywhere. So yeah, we're easy to find, and you can anyone can come around, look around, see um, who usually gets the result we're talking about, see if they resonate with you, and go from there. That's what I would encourage people to do.
Sounds good. Well, listen, thanks for doing what you're doing from a talent development perspective. It's definitely a need. And it's great to see that people out there providing these sort of kind of opportunities. And I think it's, again, with the world changing so fast, we got to upskill, we got to reskill ourselves and continue to be curious about what's out there. So thank you for doing what you guys are doing with Yellowtail.
Yes, thank you, Elena. Thank you for having me.